We're talking about the positions of concern for the Gophers on the football side of things. Also going to talk about, is this QB room in good shape heading into the season? And finally, what are going to be the best games of the 2024 season? We're diving in today at Locked On Golden Gophers.
You are Locked On Golden Gophers.
No matter what we're going to do here, we're just going to keep rowing.
Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
However it turns out, we're just going to keep rowing.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're just going to keep rowing, and keep rowing.
What up, Gopher fans? You are listening to Locked On Golden Gophers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name's Kane Rob, host of the podcast, former collegiate football video coordinator and recruiting assistant, here to talk Golden Gophers with you each and every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Today, we're diving into some good ones. We're going to talk about the early enrollees, but also what positions I believe are the most concern for the Gophers heading into the spring session of football. On top of that, we're going to talk about that quarterback room. Now, obviously, it's kind of a position of concern because of the lack of depth right now, but where does it sit and how is it shaping up for 2024? And then finally, we're going to talk about the Gophers' schedule, what I believe are the 5 best games for the Gophers in 2024. We're diving into that today, so don't miss any of your daily Gophers content by being sure to hit subscribe over on YouTube. Give me a follow over at Gophers Kane Rob on X or Twitter or whatever we're calling it. You know, I left the Bird app on here for so long as far as like the logo, but it's been converted, so officially it's X. Feels kind of gross about that, but I digress. Let's dive into some Gophers football talk today, starting with spring football, which starts now. It starts this week, and the Gophers are going to get in there like swimwear on full blast, getting ready to prep for the new season. Now, early enrollees, you're talking about players that are coming in to join the team, along with the players of last year who still have eligibility and remained with the team. Who all is going to be on this roster in the early session? Well, you're looking at a split of almost 50-50 when it comes to transfers and early enrollee freshmen coming in. You've got 7 transfers coming in, 9 early enrollee freshmen. But the thing that stands out the most with the early enrollee group is that of the 16 players in that group, 12 of them are offensive players. So a lot of the players coming back on defense are players we saw last season, players that have stepped up into bigger roles, younger players that got a lot of snaps, and now they're going to be making a case to try and get some starter roles, some more opportunities, work into rotations. Maybe we see a little bit more of Craig McDonald, who we didn't get a lot of last year, Zaquan, Kerry Brown. All those guys are going to have opportunities to go out there and compete and try to put their name in the conversation for a starting position early in this spring session. So the defense has a lot of returners, but they still have a handful of guys entering in the early enrollee period. 3 of the 4 defensive players coming through are all cornerbacks. So you've got the transfer from TCU in Giante. You've got Ethan Robinson from Bucknell. And then you've got a true freshman in Mike Gerald, who is also joining the early enrollee group. And then Sam Macy, a linebacker edge player, who will be joining. And then you've got a ton of offensive players, 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and an offensive lineman in Nathan Roy. There's a lot of offense coming in. We'll see how they slot in, how they fit in. We know Max Broermer is probably going to have the first look at the starting quarterback position, and probably my guess would be win that position. But how does it all play out? The biggest thing that my question is heading into this spring session is which positions are the ones to worry about for the Gophers. Now, at this point last year, I had talked about, I was worried about the cornerback depth and whatnot, but then once we got some more corners into the building in that second wave of transfers, I was like, I'm not too concerned. I like the depth they brought in. Now, the depth they brought in ended up being pretty nice in Trayvon Jones, who played really well for the Gophers, but there were still moments where that secondary really lacked as far as the passing defense last year, but that had to do with injuries. It had to do with still getting familiar with the system. And that's a big question heading into the season is, what is the system? It's going to be something of the similar sort. We still have that Shiano tree that's coming through, and new defensive coordinator Heatherman is going to bring that, but he's going to bring new wrinkles. So what new wrinkles does this new defensive coordinator bring to the Minnesota defense, and how aggressive is he? That's going to be a big question I will love to see. How does he get after it? How does he mesh with the other coaches on staff, and Coach Collins, Coach Monroe, Coach Debo? Those three position coaches that are back with the Gophers, they seem to have really good chemistry. They have good relationships with their players. How does Coach Heatherman fit into that and elevate their group as a whole? Really looking forward to the defense, but let's talk about those positions that I'm worried about most. Now, the first one is center. I brought it up on a show last week. I'm not going to rehash it all, but I will be sure to link that show at the end of this video so you can go and check that out on my thoughts with the center position for the Gophers, which ways they could look, or do they just go full in on youth and see who steps up to be the future of the program? But you can check that out. I'll link it at the end of the show, like I said. But the next position of worry for me is the defensive line. Now, both the interior defensive line and the edge could use some high upside experienced players that can work into the rotation, players that can make it not miss a beat when someone needs a breather, when we need fresh legs on the field to keep the pressure going. Because with Coach Rossi, we wanted to get pressure, but with Coach Heatherman, I believe they're going to want to get even more pressure created. And it all starts with that front defensive line, but it also starts with the front seven. And so I think overall that's going to be a point of emphasis, but where do you find more experience for this defensive line? You're losing Chris Collins, you're losing Kyler Baugh. Both of them played a lot of snaps in 2023. Now, that said, it feels like the portal is pretty picked over at this point. It's pretty drying up when it comes to Power 5 programs and the type of talent that you're trying to bring in to be immediate impact players, not players that can just grow within the system or whatnot. You've got those. This is a life program. This is a program where they're trying to take high school recruits and build them up player development through to be their best selves on and off the field. So they're going to continue to do that. But how do you bring in that high upside talent? The portal looks like it might have been kind of out of that, what you're looking for, those immediate impact players at this point in time. So my best guess is that the Gophers, they lean into the depth that they have right now and see what they have. You've luckily got Darnell Jeffries coming back, who is coming back from a season-ending injury that happened prior to the season. You've got returners of Josh Joyner, Danny Strigow, Devin Eastern, Anthony Smith, Jalen Logan, Redding, Logan Richter. All of those players played roles in the rotation last season. And so they're going to look to elevate. They're going to look to make bigger roles. And who doesn't step up, what doesn't step up, that's where you need to start to dive in. And how do you bring additions? Do you have a Theo Randall? Do you have a Martin Owusu who are ready to take maybe a few snaps every game? If they're not, can you find something in that second wave of the portal that comes after the spring session and it closes in May? That's where you're going to start to see more names hit the portal again from different programs, depending on what spring went like, depending on did they get some momentum, did they get some opportunities in the spring? And if they don't, is that when they hit that second wave? And that's where you can maybe find a couple depth pieces on that defensive line. So that's kind of how I see the Gophers shaking things out. I don't know if they add a big name or some highly experienced veteran defensive lineman at this point in time. Now, if the right name comes across, then maybe, but I think right now their biggest thing is going to be addressing that second wave and seeing what they have right now, similar to what we did with the cornerback position last spring. We kind of used the young guys, let them get reps, and if they weren't ready, if things were feeling shallow and whatnot, that's when they went and got Trayvon Jones. That's when they went and got Bride. And so overall, I think that's a similar approach you will see with the defensive line. And then finally, the other question I have is tight end. Now, similar to D-line, maybe this is a position where you really put an emphasis on youth in the spring and see what you have and test it out, see what elevates, see who's ready, see if there is a need for more help and go from there. Now, one thing I do want to check on too, I haven't seen, is Nick Caller back for the next season now. At the beginning of 2023, he had 2 years of eligibility remaining. He used one in 2023, so technically he still has 1 year of eligibility left. I don't remember hearing too much on if he's back, if he's with Dinkytown athletes and whatnot, so that's one thing I definitely want to look into and get addressed here. But overall, those are the three positions of concern besides the quarterback and getting some more depth in the room. I think overall the talent within the quarterback room is solid, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but they still need depth. So overall, the final questions I have heading into spring is what wrinkles that defensive coordinator adds, how aggressive will he be, but also on the offensive side of things, will the offensive efficiency tick up or will it be hurt by conservative play again, playing not to lose again in the 2024 season? I really hope that's not the case, but I wouldn't be baffled either. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And finally, how does the running back room shake out? Because we know Darius Taylor, he's going to be RB1, he's going to be the lead back, but you got a lot of different skill sets in that room now. C.A. Bangura, Jordan Newbin, Marcus Major. They all bring different facets to the game. And then you've got young guys coming in, Fame Ijaboy, and you've got Jaden Wright as well. Both of those players bring different skill sets. It'll be curious to see how it all shakes out. We're going to find out this spring, but overall, we're going to talk about that quarterback room because that is the key room for how the upside of Minnesota could go in 2024. We're diving into that coming up next. First, I want to get real with you for a second. I want to talk to you about something a little bit about real life. I know we come here to escape from the realities of real life, but can we just talk about it for a brief second? Because according to the FDA, their pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin, and right in the middle of the worst cold and flu season in over a decade. Now, things like that can be scary. And I can't imagine feeling more helpless, more worried if my wife were to end up, needing life-saving medication that they couldn't get or have access to due to supply chain issues. Now, luckily, Jase Medical has us covered, and they can have you covered as well. The Jase case is a pack of 5 antibiotics that are used to treat a long list of bacterial infections and illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, and many more. And this stuff could happen to any of us. So definitely head on over to jasemedical.com. If you visit their site, you'll complete a physician encounter, and it will be reviewed by a board-certified physician. And then your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the cost. That's right, a fraction of the cost. You can't go wrong there. And on top of that, if you go to jasemedical.com and you use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, you will get $20 off your order. So definitely check it out today over at jasemedical.com today. All right, Gophers fans, let's talk about this QB room because you know what? Max Broermer looks very promising. He looks like the starter. He looks like a guy to be excited about in 2024, and I am. I'm ready for it. After talking to his quarterback coaches, after watching some film, after reading a little bit more about him, after watching some interviews he did at his previous university, I can tell you I am excited. I'm stoked, and I think he could fit the offensive system here. And I think that was the big difference between Ethan Kaliakmanis and Max Broermer was Ethan Kaliakmanis has the raw talent. He had the potential, but he didn't fit the system that the Gophers coaches staff was trying to run. Plain and simple. And you can go two ways. You can go, hey, I believe in our system, and if we run our system, we'll win games. Or you could be, hey, we're going to shape our system each year to whoever the talent is that we have and bringing out their best assets. Now, on offense, that's not the type of offense we are. It's just not. We like to be a ground and pound team. And with that, the passing principles come from the beliefs that the coaches have in this offensive system. And Ethan didn't seem to fit that, whether it was due to the lack of confidence from coaching or what have you. We're not going to go there. We don't know the behind the scenes. But overall, Max Broermer fits into that system as far as getting through multiple reads in the progressions, getting the ball out quick, anticipatory throws, staying within the timing and being ahead of timing. Those are the things, attributes that Max Broermer brings to play that should help him be successful in this offense. Now, if that doesn't happen, I think you need to start asking questions about the offense itself as opposed to the players within the system. That'll come in due time. But I think Max Broermer can elevate the passing numbers that we've seen. Like I said, the difference between him and Ethan Kaliakmanis also in the hype between them. He's going to have hype throughout this offseason. Gophers fans are excited about him, just like we are excited about Ethan Kaliakmanis. But the big thing is that the hype we saw for Ethan Kaliakmanis was off of brief flashes, and we heard about how much he impressed the staff and other players and things of that nature, and that got us excited. And you're still going to hear those things with Max Broermer. You're still going to have staff members who are impressed with it. You're going to have players who are talking about the attributes he brings or the way the ball comes off. You're going to hear things that get you excited, and that is okay. But the difference is that Max Broermer has the sample size and the consistency of playing college football for the past 4 years at a starter capacity. Now, over the last 2 years, he's been over 3,000 passing yards, over 25 plus touchdowns. And on top of that, interceptions relatively low with only 8 interceptions and 6 interceptions in the past 2 seasons. Now, we've mentioned it on here before, but he's not going to get the pass attempts that he saw with New Hampshire. In New Hampshire, he was seeing 35 to 40 passing attempts on the reg. He's not going to see that here. He's not going to see 35 pass attempts a game. It's just not going to happen. And I'm done wishing, hoping, thinking it's going to happen. Now, I'm not going to be fooled on that note once again. I don't think that you should be either, but regardless, I do think that Max Broermer's ability to get through multiple reads quickly could lead to more efficiency on less passing attempts. So no, Max might not be in line for another 3,000-yard passing season, but if he can lock in around 2,500 on less attempts, that is going to help the offense so much, tenfold, and then some. On top of that, he would help be a relief to this offense in the fact of it would open up the ground game more because you have to respect it a bit more, which should free Darius Taylor up, which should allow the upside of the offense to be even higher than what we saw over the past 2 years. Now, even at 2,500 passing yards last season, if Max Broermer can get to 2,500 passing yards, last season in the Big Ten, 2,500 passing yards would have got you fifth in the entire conference in passing yards overall. Now, if you add in the 4 new teams that came in, it would have been about 8th, but that's still in the top half of the entire Big Ten conference, which you would not be upset about as a Gopher fan. So if we can get to that level, that's going to be big. That's going to help our offense overall, but feeling more comfortable with that starter and the production that he has, I get it, and I'm excited about that. But beyond Max Broermer is where the questions start to come in for the Gophers at that quarterback room because it's a little bit murkier. Now, you've got Cole Kramer. He's gone. You've got Athan Kaliakmanis, who we've already mentioned is obviously gone. You've got Drew Vioto. He was gone. So the only player that you have coming back is Max Shikenjansky, who will be here in year 2. He redshirted last year as a walk-on. And then you have incoming freshman Drake Lindsey. Now, we're going to get to him in a second, but we had Logan Fife from Fresno State. Now, he's no longer here. He's going to Montana. He had briefly committed here and then decommitted and went back into the portal. But the biggest thing is, beyond Max Shikenjansky, who's getting a feel for it, is a walk-on. You don't want to put too much pressure on the young guy as far as being the backup immediately unless he goes out there and takes the job and he's ready for it. But you don't want to force him into that type of position. Same thing with your true freshman in Drake Lindsey, who many people are extremely excited about, myself included. But Drake Lindsey balled out in high school. I'm with you there. He killed it. But in Arkansas high school ball or any major high school, any state really, besides maybe Texas and a couple, maybe Florida, if you're not, even if you're at the highest level in those states, in Arkansas, here in Minnesota, it's not the same as playing Division I Power 5 football. The speed is completely different. So that's going to be an adjustment. And I'm not saying he can't adjust to that, but you don't want to put your quarterback into the position where they have to be successful or their confidence then dwindles and you start to have issues and all of a sudden the upside and the promise that is no longer. You don't want to go down that route. So overall, the Gophers program needs to bring in some more players to this quarterback room for some depth. Now, what Lindsey does bring that really excites me is his size, his intangibles. You can't make that stuff up. He is built to be a prototypical type of quarterback. 6'5" or 6'6", 220 pounds. Now, that is prior to him working with the Gophers strength program, and that will get him right. That strength program will get him in shape, get him good weight, get him stronger, and that's going to be a good thing in the long run. And he's especially good as he's an early enrollee, so he'll be in that program starting this week. And so you have those intangibles, but most fans are excited by the rocket arm. But if you look at that arm talent on top of the production that he had year to year, what was most impressive was the progressions that he took in throwing with more anticipation and keeping the ball out of harm's way. If he continues to do that and continues to grow on that, it's going to be a very promising thing for this program moving forward. Now, those two things together could make him the future quarterback in the Big Ten and for the Gophers, but grasping the speed of the game is tough for anyone coming straight out of high school, so that's going to be an adjustment. So the room itself has a lot of upside, but it needs more depth, plain and simple. There's no questions beyond it. You need one, maybe even two more guys to add to this room. You'd love to add someone with some sort of experience, a lot of time at a lower level, or maybe a little bit of time within the conference, or at least at the Power 5 level, knowing the speed that it takes to play at that type of play. Now, some names to consider, I think overall, would be in that veteran category would be Clifton McDowell. He played for Montana. He got a lot of time there, started multiple games, threw for over 2,000 yards, but he is up and down with his accuracy and decision making. So that, again, is maybe more of a backup role that can step up in the case of something bad happening. On top of that, you've got TJ Finley, who could be a guy. Texas State, he was younger. He has 2 years of eligibility left, I believe, but he has a lot of in-game experience having played at Texas State. Last season, he had 3,439 pass yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, but he might not be looking to be a backup. After finally starting for a full season last year, he left Texas State because they brought in Arizona's quarterback, Jaden DeLora, from the transfer portal. And so now he's looking possibly for a starting opportunity. So maybe he wouldn't consider it. And then you've got Diego Pavia. Now, he's from New Mexico State with Coach Kill. He played against us in the 2022 season, and he definitely struggled, but he has come a long way in the 2 years since then. Now, he really started to click in the final 3 games of the 2022 season, but 2023, he didn't miss a beat. He had 2,973 pass yards, 26 touchdowns, only 9 interceptions, but he also brings a rushing element with 928 rush yards and 7 touchdowns this past year. And the year before, he had 508 and 6 touchdowns, so he can get it done on the ground as well. Those 3 are names that maybe you could have some interest in, that could come in and be a backup, be a guy that could step up if something were to happen. And at the same time, maybe have a year of eligibility beyond that, just in case if Drake Lindsay or a younger guy is not ready to go. But then you could also go to the route of younger players. Now, some names to maybe watch: Austin Mack from Washington, really high-rated quarterback in the class of 2023, I believe. He had reclassed. He was in 24, and he reclassed to 2023. He was with Washington. He was working with Kalen DeBoer. Lots of talent, 6'6", big size again. It might be a pipe dream to wish he would come out this way, especially since we don't throw the ball as much as a Washington where he committed. But that could be a fun name to bring in to try and compete with Drake Lindsay and see who can really push themselves to win the job in the future. Another guy, Braden Dorman, young quarterback from Arizona, was with the University of Arizona, could come in and compete and learn with Drake Lindsay as well, was a 4-star quarterback in last year's class. Those are 2 names to maybe look at, but it might not be any of those names. In the long run, I don't know what's going to happen, but they have to add 1 or 2 quarterbacks for sure heading into this offseason. Now, to wrap this one up, we're talking about the 5 best games of the 2024 season. I'm going to tell you why I think these 5 are the best ones, and you're definitely going to want to attend some of these coming up next. First, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel, because right now, new customers, you can take advantage of the best deal out there, and that is the fact that you can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed with any $5 bet that you place. So win or lose, you will get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Now, that's from live same game parlays. You can go to the Explore tab to look up different bets. You can also go to the Parlay Hub, so you can take that as the best way to find popular plays, all that and more, including spreads, player props, you name it. They've got it for you over at FanDuel. And you want to hurry up and get there as a new customer, because the NFL season is wrapping up, and you can take advantage of who you think maybe would be the next Super Bowl winner, the Super Bowl MVP. You take a shot at it over at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Any $5 bet that you place will get you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. All right, Gophers fans, we are wrapping this one up and talking about the 5 games that I believe could be the most fun games for Minnesota in 2024. Now, the first game is the opening game at home versus North Carolina. Maybe a little bit of disdain from how last year's game went, especially because it kind of was the beginning of the cookie crumbling in the 2023 season. Now, they don't have Drake May anymore. It should still be a competitive game. In Minnesota, it's going to be exciting from different standpoints, because Minnesota will look to make noise right away in the new year and set the tone from jump. But also, it should be a fun one for Gophers fans who will officially get to see their new quarterback in action for the first time. On top of that, Darius Taylor officially starting as Minnesota's lead back on the season, and the new defensive coordinator looking to start the year, especially versus one of the best running backs in the country from the 2023 season in Omarion Hampton. I believe he was a Doak Walker finalist. So they're going to have their hands full in the running game right away. So that'll be a fun one. Then the next game that I think is a top 5 game for Minnesota is at home again versus Iowa. Now, you're kicking off the year with 4 straight games at home, and that is not a bad way to start the season. And if everyone remembers last year's game. Everyone and their mother is going to want to see this matchup. It's going to be one of the games of the year for the Gophers, probably, not only for the rivalry and the trophy, but after how last year ended, you can believe there's going to be some bad blood and people really wanting a dub in that game. Plus, Iowa not having McNamara last year or their tight ends, this rivalry game already seems to be one for the ages as we begin to get ready for the next season. Then the third game that I have circled on my calendar is USC, again at home. Another big home game for the Gophers, a fun one to check out, getting a look at Lincoln Riley and his team without Caleb Williams. Now, in the Big Ten, and every Big Ten team is going to want to get their best shot at proving that they are not a conference to be looked over, especially the teams from the West that continuously get kind of disdain from other fan bases. So if you can go out there and you can put up numbers or shut down a USC team, the UCLA team, but do it at home, that's a big one, and that will be something fun. And then you add a little bit more flair, a little bit more fire to that USC matchup, knowing they came in late and took Jide Abasiri from the Gophers. That will have fans ready to really want to take it out and get a dub at home versus USC. The final two games I have are both on the road. The first one is at Rutgers. Our defensive coordinator came from Rutgers. They took Flip Dixon. They took Ethan Kaligmanis. They took Dino. They took a number of other players. They took Kirk Shiraka. They took Harris Simiak, all from the Gophers. And so the rivalry and the changeover is building in this matchup, and I think it could all come to a head, especially if Ethan Kaligmanis is the starting quarterback for them at this point in time. Now, Minnesota is going to want to dominate this game, just like they did last time they played at Dinkytown. But the last time they played, they had Kirk Shiraka as their offensive coordinator. So maybe Kirk Shiraka wants to prove it was him. It wasn't the Gophers who did it. There's a lot of little backstories in that matchup that could be really fun and should make it one of the better games for the Gophers in the season. And then finally, my fifth game, I could not leave it off the list. We've got the game at Wisconsin. You need to get the Axe back. You got to get in there. And overall, it has been a back and forth rivalry since PJ Fleck has come to town here with the Gophers. As much as the Badgers probably don't want to admit that, it has been. And so now the Gophers got to get it back. They got to even it out. And on top of that, people will talk about, well, you're not winning in Madison. You're not winning in Madison. The Gophers have won 2 of the last 3 in Madison, and they're going to look to try and get that streak going and bring the trophy back with a new quarterback at the helm, with Darius Taylor healthy. Those are things that didn't happen in the last Wisconsin matchup and things that probably will go overlooked until we meet again at Wisconsin. Until then, I will see you here where we're going to continue to talk about Gophers on the daily. So be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any future Gophers content moving forward. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any concerns on the Gophers football team, basketball teams, or any of that, drop those questions in the comments below. We're going to have another mailbag coming up in the very near future. But until then, I appreciate you listening. Please leave a 5-star review on any audio platform you listen, and I will see you tomorrow. Row the boat, Sky Go Gophers, and as always, don't forget to subscribe.